I saw my parents roll their eyes the second I sat down at the defense table. Not a tiny polite eye roll either. A full dramatic circle like I'd just tracked mud into their perfect white kitchen instead of walking into a courtroom with my name on the case file. The chair under me squeaked as I scooted in. Of course it did. My good blazer, bought on clearance 3 years ago for job interviews that went nowhere, pulled at my shoulders when I set my beat-up briefcase on the table. The fake leather was peeling at the corners. Across the aisle, my parents' attorney had one of those smooth black cases that looked like it came with its own tax bracket. Mom sat behind the plaintiff's table in a cream blazer and pearls that matched her Instagram profile picture. Dad had his navy suit on, the one he wore to every important event. They leaned in toward each other like this was just another school conference where they'd complain that I wasn't applying myself. My brother Evan sat between them, scrolling on his phone. He didn't even look up. I could practically hear the caption he'd write later. Family first. With a prayer hands emoji, probably. I let my fingers close around the tiny USB drive in my pocket. Smooth plastic, warm from my palm. It was the only thing in the room that was 100% mine, and the only reason my knees weren't knocking together. All rise, the bailiff called. Everyone stood. My heart started doing drum solos against my ribs. I tried that breathing thing I'd seen in a reel. Inhale 4, hold, exhale 4, but all I could smell was old paper, wood polish, and someone's too strong cologne. Judge Armstrong walked in, black robe swaying as she climbed up to the bench. I'd Googled her the night before. 20 years on the bench. Fair but firm, hates wasted time. In person, she looked exactly like someone who had zero patience for nonsense, and even less for dramatics. You may be seated, she said. We sat. My chair squeaked again, like it wanted its own moment. The judge opened the case file and started reading. I watched her eyes move down the page that told my life story in bullet points and accusations. Fraud. Misuse. Breach of family trust. Written like I was some stranger who'd wandered in off the street, not their daughter. She turned another page, then stopped. Her eyes lifted and landed right on me. Ms. Reyes, she said. My stomach flipped. Yes, Your Honor? Before we begin, she continued, her voice calm but a little sharper. Did you bring the recordings referenced in your affidavit? The word recording slammed into the air like someone had dropped a plate. Evan's head snapped up from his phone. My mom's hand tightened around my dad's wrist. Their lawyer's pen actually stopped moving. My pulse roared in my ears, but my fingers were steady as I pulled the USB from my pocket and set it on the table. The tiny click it made against the wood sounded huge to me. Yes, Your Honor, I said. They're all on this drive with transcripts. For the first time since I walked in, I turned and looked straight at my parents. No eye rolls now. They were staring at that little piece of plastic like it was a ticking bomb, and for the first time in months, I felt the smallest shift. Maybe I wasn't the one on trial anymore. 6 months earlier, if you'd told me I'd be the one bringing recordings to court against my own parents, I would have laughed. Or cried. Probably both. Back then, life was simple in that exhausting, broke kind of way. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., put on my grocery store polo, and spent 4 hours stocking shelves and pretending I didn't notice when people blocked the aisle with their carts and then got mad at me about it. After that, I'd switch into slightly nicer clothes in the bathroom and walk 3 blocks to my second job, answering phones at a dentist's office where people believed emergency meant my tooth has felt weird for 3 weeks. Then I'd go home to my studio apartment that was technically garden level, which is landlord speak for half underground with suspicious bugs. Evan, meanwhile, was building his company. That's what my parents called it, with capital letters you could hear in their voices. He posted a lot of photos with captions like, "Grind never stops, and when they doubt you, work harder." From what I could tell, most of his grind happened in coffee shops with latte art. One Sunday dinner, between the rice and the roast chicken, my mom smiled at me in that too bright way she has. Good news, Lila, she said, like she was about to announce I'd won a vacation. We helped your credit. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. Helped my credit? We put a couple of household bills in your name, Dad said, waving his fork like it was no big deal. It builds your score. Everyone does it. A little alarm bell went off in my head. Which bills? Oh, don't be dramatic, Mom muttered. The power, the internet. Just for a while, you barely use credit anyway. That's not the point, I said. You did it without asking me. Evan looked up long enough to smirk. You're welcome, Lil. You know how hard it is to get approved for stuff without a history? I wanted to push. To say that's my social security number, not a library card, but my mom launched into a speech about how they'd sacrificed so much and how I never appreciate what we do. By the time the plates were cleared, I was too tired to fight. 2 months later, the first collection call came. I was on my 10-minute break behind the grocery store, sitting on an upside-down milk crate, when an unknown number buzzed my phone. Is this Lila Reyes? A sharp voice asked. Yes. We're calling about your past due balance on the Capital First card ending in 4392. Your payment is 92 days late. I don't have a Capital First card, I said. There was a pause, the kind that feels like judgment. Ma'am, it's in your name. Address on file is your parents' house. My stomach dropped so hard I had to put my head between my knees. I wrote down everything, hung up, and called my parents. Oh, that, Dad said, like I'd asked about a missing Tupperware lid. Relax. We used your name to get a better rate for the business line. Evan's credit is messy right now. Messy, I repeated. There's a credit card I've never seen in my name that's 3 months late. We're handling it, Mom cut in. Don't make a scene. Family helps family. Family also asks first, I said. Don't be ungrateful, she snapped. You think we didn't co-sign your student loans? They hadn't. The government had. But arguing with my mother when she was in that tone was like arguing with a fire alarm. The calls kept coming. Different companies, different balances. A loan in my name for business equipment, a store card I'd never applied for. My email filled with urgent and final notice. When I tried to apply for a better apartment, one with actual sunlight, I got politely rejected. Due to items on your credit report. That night, I pulled my credit report for the first time in months. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. My score had fallen off a cliff. Accounts I didn't recognize. Late payments, high balances, all tied to my parents' address or Evans LLC. I took screenshots, dozens of them, printed them out at the library for 20 cents a page, because somehow I still believed having paper would make it feel more real. The next Saturday, my parents asked me to come by to talk like adults. They had coffee on the table and a stack of papers neatly arranged, which is never a good sign. We know you're upset, Mom said, hands folded like she was leading a support group. So your father and I took responsibility. She pushed a document toward me. All you need to do is sign this and we can start fixing everything. I read the first paragraph, then the second. My hands started to shake, not from panic this time, but from anger. This says I borrowed money from you and Evan, I said slowly. It says I agreed to use my credit for the family business and that I'm responsible for all the debt. Mom smiled like I'd gotten an answer right. See? It just makes it official. That way, if anyone asks, it's all clean and tidy. Clean, I repeated. Tidy. My dad sighed, already annoyed. Lila, stop overthinking. This is how families do things. You want us to lose the house? Is that what you want? There it was, the guilt grenade. For a moment, I almost did what I always do. Swallowed the anger, signed where they pointed, told myself it was easier. Instead, I set the papers down. No, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. I'm not signing this. Mom's face went flat. The soft, sweet tone vanished. After everything we've done for you. You used my identity to open accounts, I said. You ruined my credit, and now you want me to say it was my idea. It was for the family, Dad snapped. You are part of this family, remember? I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. For the first time today, yes, I remember. I left the papers on the table, walked out to my aging car, and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, shaking. I didn't know it yet, but that was the day this stopped being a family misunderstanding and started becoming a court case. If walking out of my parents' house was the first crack, getting served was when the whole thing split open. It happened on a Tuesday, because of course it did. Bad news loves Tuesdays. I had just come home from work, kicked off my shoes, and was debating whether I could afford pizza that wasn't frozen when someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 short, official-sounding knocks. When I opened it, a man in a polo and cargo pants stood there with a clipboard. "Lila Reyes?" he asked. "Yes?" He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served," he said, like he was dropping off a package, and then he was gone. I just stood there for a second in the doorway, holding this heavy, expensive-feeling envelope like it might bite. At my tiny table, I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out the papers. Complaint. Reyes versus Reyes. My parents. And my brother. Suing me. They accused me of fraud. Of secretly using family funds. Of opening lines of credit without consent. They said I'd sabotaged Evan's business and caused severe emotional distress to my parents. I laughed once, a short, sharp sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. Then I cried so hard my nose clogged and my chest hurt. The next day at the dentist's office, my manager called me into her office. She had my file on the desk and a printout of something that looked like a court record. "We did a routine check," she said, avoiding my eyes. "This came up. Is there something you want to tell us?" "It's my parents," I said. "They used my credit. I'm the one who—" I stopped. I could hear how crazy it sounded. Her mouth pulled into a sad little line. "I'm sorry, Lila. Until this is resolved, we have to put you on unpaid leave. It's policy when there's an active fraud case." It didn't matter that I was the one being accused, not convicted. It didn't matter that the people accusing me also shared my last name. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up. My mom had posted one of those vague Facebook statuses. "Nothing hurts more than a child who betrays you after everything you've done. Please keep our family in your prayers." There was a crying emoji. Of course there was. Relatives I hadn't seen in years sent me messages. "What's going on? Your mom is heartbroken. You should just make it right, mija." My cousin sent screenshots from the family WhatsApp group. My dad talking about our ungrateful daughter. My aunt chiming in that money changes people. No one asked what changed them. I muted the chat. I turned my phone face down. For a while, I just lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like the room was shrinking. Then my friend Tessa called. "You sound like you've swallowed a vacuum cleaner," she said. "What happened?" I told her. All of it. The bills, the debt, the lawsuit, losing my job. By the end, I was hoarse. She was quiet for a second. Then, "Okay, first of all, your family is insane. Second, you need a lawyer." "I can't afford a lawyer," I said. "I can barely afford real cheese." "There's a legal aid clinic downtown," she said. "They helped my cousin with her landlord. They do walk-ins on Thursdays. Go." "I don't know how—" "Lila," she cut in, "you cannot just show up to court with vibes and a sad story. Go. Tomorrow." So I did. The legal aid clinic was in a tired building that smelled like dust and coffee. A volunteer at the front desk gave me a clipboard and a number. I sat in a plastic chair and tried not to throw up. Finally, a man in a rumpled shirt called my name. "Ms. Reyes?" He led me into a tiny office with 2 chairs and a desk covered in files. "I'm Mr. Ibrahimi," he said. "I can't guarantee full representation, but I can give you advice. Tell me what's going on." I told the story again. this time with dates and amounts and names. He didn't interrupt, just scribbled notes and asked short questions to fill in details. When I finished, he leaned back and blew out a breath. Okay, first thing, what your parents did is not helping your credit. It's identity theft and unauthorized borrowing. Hearing the words identity theft made my skin prickle. But they're my parents, I said weakly. He shrugged a little. The law doesn't have a family exception. He pulled a legal pad toward him. They're suing you for fraud and to make you responsible for the debt. If you don't answer, they can win by default. You need to respond. In writing. With evidence. Evidence, I repeated. The word felt heavy. Do you have any texts, emails, anything where they talk about putting things in your name without your consent? He asked. Or calls where they admit it? I have texts, I said, screenshots, and collection notices. Good. Print everything. Make copies. Save it in 3 different places. He paused. As for calls, you're in a one-party consent state. If you recorded any calls where you were on the line, that's legal. I didn't record anything, I said automatically, then paused. I remembered. One night, months before, my dad had called after drinking. I'd been so upset after we hung up. He'd basically admitted using my credit on purpose and called me soft for complaining that I'd pressed that little option on my phone, save call recording. I'd only done it so I could play it back and prove to myself he'd really said what I thought he'd said. I'd forgotten all about it. I might have one, I said slowly. On my old phone, and I have voicemails. My mom left this one where she said, just sign what your father gives you. He already put everything in your name anyway. He raised his eyebrows. That's very good for you. Very bad for them. My chest felt suddenly lighter. So that matters? It more than matters, he said. It shows they knew exactly what they were doing. Combine that with your credit report and the collection letters. It tells a story the judge won't like. He turned the legal pad around so I could see. Here's what you do. You file an answer to their complaint. Deny the lies. Attach copies of your credit report, the letters, the texts. Write a short affidavit explaining what happened in simple language. And mention the recordings. That way the court knows they exist before the hearing. That sounds like a lot, I admitted. It is a lot, he said softly. But you're not helpless. They're counting on you to be scared and quiet. Don't give them what they're counting on. He helped me draft the start of my answer, just the bones of it, simple and clear. He wrote the case number at the top of a blank page, slid it toward me. You finish this at home, he said. Bring it back if you get stuck. File before the deadline, and start gathering everything. Treat your life like a crime show. You're the one with the real evidence. That night, my apartment turned into a paper storm. I dug out old phones and email backups. I found that call recording and transferred it to my laptop. There it was, my dad's voice, slightly slurred, laughing about, using your credit, kiddo, it's cleaner than Evan's. I pulled voicemails, screenshots of texts, rejection emails from apartments and jobs that mentioned my credit. I printed out my full credit report and highlighted every line that wasn't mine. By midnight, my tiny table was buried in stacks. My fingers were covered in yellow highlighter and printer ink. My eyes burned, but I kept going. At the top of one page, above the case number, I wrote, Affidavit of Lila Reyes. And underneath that, in shaky but readable handwriting, I told the truth. For the first time in this whole mess, I wasn't just reacting. I was building something. I had no idea then how loud that tiny word recordings would sound in a courtroom months later. But I knew one thing. If my parents wanted a story, I was finally ready to give the judge the whole thing. The judge didn't ask anything else right away. She just stared at the little USB on my table for a moment, then looked back down at the file. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Very well, she said. We'll mark that as a potential exhibit for now. We'll come back to it. Her tone was calm, but the air in the room had changed. My parents must have felt it too, because no one was whispering anymore. Counsel for the plaintiffs, Judge Armstrong said, turning to their side. You may begin. Miss Klein stood up, all smooth lines and practiced concern. Thank you, Your Honor, she said. This is a sad case. My clients are loving parents who tried to help their daughter. They put bills in her name to build her credit. They lent her money when she was struggling. In return, she misused their trust, opened accounts they did not approve, and left them with serious financial damage. She talked about family sacrifices and emotional stress and betrayal. She didn't mention the part where my name had been lying under their bills like a rug they could stand on. I stared at my hands and tried to keep my face blank. Angry people look guilty in court. I'd read that in 3 different articles at 2 in the morning. Ms. Klein went on. We are simply asking that Ms. Reyes be held responsible for the debt she created and that the court recognize the real harm she has caused this family. Thank you, the judge said. Ms. Reyes, your turn. My legs felt shaky when I stood up, but my voice came out clear. That surprised me every time. Your Honor, I began, I didn't open those accounts. My parents did. They used my name, my social security number, and my credit without my consent. They told me it was family help after the fact. When the bills came, they wanted me to sign papers saying it was all my idea. I took a breath. My lawyer friend from the clinic had told me to stick to simple statements. No speeches, no essays. I first found out when collection agencies called me at work, I said. Then my credit report showed cards and loans I'd never applied for. I brought copies for the court. I lifted the folder I'd labeled in giant letters. Credit stuff. I knew it wasn't a proper legal name, but it made me laugh when I was printing until midnight, so it stayed. The clerk came over and took the folder. The judge flipped through it, eyes moving fast. These accounts all list your parents' address, she said. Yes, Your Honor, I said. I've never lived there as an adult. And you say you did not apply for them? No, I said. I applied for a student card when I was 19. That's the only one that's really mine. The judge nodded slowly, then looked at my parents. Did you open accounts in your daughter's name? She asked. My mom straightened in her seat. We helped her, she said. She has always been bad with money. We thought it would keep things in the family. We agreed as a family. I did not agree, I said before I could stop myself. Ms. Reyes, the judge said warningly, and my mouth snapped shut. Right, no interrupting. The judge looked back at my parents. You say it was a family agreement. Do you have anything in writing showing your daughter agreed to be responsible for these debts? My dad nodded quickly. Yes, Your Honor, we had a document. She refused to sign it. That's why we're here. She is trying to leave us with everything. So there is no signed agreement, the judge said. Silence. Miss Klein cleared her throat. Your Honor, even without a signed document, we can show a pattern of behavior. And we will get there, Judge Armstrong said. But first, I want to address something important. She turned back to me. Ms. Reyes, in your affidavit, you mentioned recordings, calls and voicemails. Do these relate directly to who opened these accounts? Yes, Your Honor, I said. My palms were sweating, but I kept my hands flat on the table so no one would see. There's a call where my father says he used my credit because my brother's was too messy. There's a voicemail from my mother telling me to sign whatever they gave me because everything is already in my name anyway. Behind me, my mom made a small sound. I didn't turn around. Counsel, the judge said to Ms. Klein, have you heard these recordings? No, Your Honor, Ms. Klein said, and this time there was a crack in her voice. This is the first we're hearing detailed claims about them. Then we will all hear them together, the judge said. Ms. Reyes, are you willing to have them admitted as evidence? Yes, I said. My throat was dry, but the word came out strong. Ms. Klein stood. Your Honor, we'd like to reserve objections until we know how these recordings were obtained. Of course, the judge said. Ms. Reyes, when and how did you make these recordings? One was a call I was on, I said. I pressed the record button on my phone. The voicemail saved normally. I was in this state both times. The judge nodded. One party. Consent. Legal. Then to Ms. Klein. Objection on that basis would be denied. Ms. Klein sat back down. I passed the USB to the clerk. Watching that small, cheap piece of plastic move from my table to the judge's space felt like watching the last lifeboat leave a sinking ship and hoping I'd pick the right one. The clerk plugged it into a laptop connected to a small speaker on the judge's bench. There was a little beep and a quiet hiss of static. Play the first one, please, the judge said. My dad's voice filled the courtroom. Tinny, a little slurred, but clear. Come on, kiddo, he said on the recording. I remembered that night so well, me standing in my dark kitchen, staring at the one plant I hadn't killed yet. We used your name because your credit's clean. Evans is trashed. You want your brother to go under? On the recording, my own voice sounded small. You didn't ask me. We're your parents, my dad's recorded voice said. We don't have to ask. Family helps family. You'll sign the paper later and make it official. You're too soft to let us sink. The clip stopped. For a second, no one moved. The judge's face didn't change, but something in the room did. Even the fluorescent light seemed to buzz quieter. We have more, I said, my real voice shaky now. If the court wants to hear them. The judge looked at me over her glasses. Oh, she said calmly, I think we all very much want to hear the rest. The second recording was a voicemail. I knew which one it was before it even started, just from the tiny click and the faint static. My stomach nodded anyway. Then my mother's voice filled the courtroom. Lila, sweetheart, voicemail mom said, sounding sugary sweet and annoyed at the same time. Stop making everything so difficult. Just sign what your father gives you. He already put everything in your name anyway. So this is just cleaning it up. Don't embarrass us. The clip ended with a little beep my phone makes when a message cuts off. The silence that followed could have swallowed the whole room. I stared at a knot in the wood of the table, so I wouldn't have to look back at the gallery. I could feel eyes on me, from the strangers, from the clerk, even from Ms. Klein. Judge Armstrong's face hadn't changed much, but something about her jaw looked tighter. She folded her hands. Counsel, she said slowly to Ms. Klein. Do your clients dispute that these are their voices? Ms. Klein swallowed. Your Honor, we'd like the opportunity to review the full recordings and the metadata. That wasn't my question, the judge said. Her tone wasn't sharp, exactly, just final. Ms. Klein glanced back at my parents. My dad shifted in his seat. That sounds like me, he said, but it's out of context. And you, Mrs. Reyes? The judge asked. My mom pressed her lips together. It sounds like me, she admitted, but that's not what we meant. The judge nodded once, like she'd expected that answer. Very well. We'll admit these as preliminary exhibits, subject to a fuller review if needed. She turned back to me. Ms. Reyes, thank you. You may sit. My legs were grateful. My heart was not. It wanted to run laps. Now, the judge said, looking down at the file again, we have parents who admit opening accounts in their daughter's name, no signed agreement, and recordings suggesting they did so without her consent, and expected her to sign after the fact. She shut the folder with a soft thud. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, she said, please come forward and stand next to your attorney. Watching my parents walk up to the front of the courtroom was weirdly surreal. I was so used to seeing them in kitchens and living rooms and church pews. Seeing them under those harsh fluorescent lights, facing the bench, made them look smaller. Raise your right hands, the clerk said. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury? I do, they both said. Mrs. Reyes, the judge began, why did you open accounts in your daughter's name? My mom smoothed her blazer, stalling. We were trying to help her, she said. She's always been irresponsible. We thought if we managed things, it would be better. In the recordings, the judge said, you refer to putting everything in her name anyway, and not wanting her to embarrass you. That doesn't sound like managing. It sounds like hiding. My mom's mouth opened and closed. It was a poor choice of words. And a poor choice of actions, the judge said. She turned to my dad. Mr. Reyes, you mentioned your son's messy credit. Did you open accounts in Lila's name because your son could not qualify? He shifted his weight. It was for the family business, he said. We thought she'd understand. Did you ask for her permission first? He hesitated. We told her after. So that would be a no, the judge said. You told her after, and when she refused to sign documents accepting responsibility, you filed this lawsuit accusing her of fraud. She tapped the file. Is that correct? My dad looked at Ms. Klein like he wanted her to throw him a rope. She stayed very still. Yes, he muttered. Judge Armstrong leaned back slightly, considering. Counsel, she said to Ms. Klein, do you wish to question your clients further before I make any preliminary findings? I half expected Ms. Klein to decline, but she stood up, smoothing her jacket like this was just another Tuesday. Just a few clarifications, Your Honor. She turned to my parents, her professional calm back in place. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, she said, when you opened these accounts, did you intend to harm your daughter? No, my mother said quickly. Of course not. We just panicked. Evan's business was struggling. We thought we'd pay everything off once things turned around. So your intention, Ms. Klein said, was to protect the family, including Lila. My dad nodded, eager now. Exactly. We didn't think she'd make such a big deal out of it. I almost laughed. I didn't. And when you filed this lawsuit, Ms. Klein went on carefully, what did you hope to achieve? To get her to take responsibility, my mom said. We didn't know what else to do. She refused to sign. We were desperate. There it was. Desperate. The judge held up a hand, stopping the questioning. Thank you, counsel. That's enough. She steepled her fingers and looked at my parents for a long moment. Here is what I see, she said finally. Two parents in financial trouble who use their adult child's identity and credit without her consent, then attempted to force her to accept legal responsibility when the consequences arrived. My mom inhaled sharply, like the words themselves hurt. I also see, the judge continued, a pattern of minimizing that behavior and shifting blame onto the daughter who is now facing damaged credit, job consequences, and the emotional burden of being called a fraud in public records. She turned to me. Ms. Reyes, do you have anything else you wish to say before I rule? My mouth went dry. I hadn't expected her to ask. A dozen things ran through my head. Old holidays, stupid arguments, my dad teaching me to ride a bike, my mom staying up with me when I had the flu, all tangled up with debt statements and late-night panic attacks and the sound of their voices on those recordings. In the end, I kept it simple. Your Honor, I said, I don't want them in jail. I don't want revenge. I just want my name back, my credit, my life, and I want them to stop acting like I did this to them. The words came out small, but they were the truest ones I had. The judge nodded once, slowly. Understood, she said. And for the first time since this started, I felt like maybe someone in authority actually did